Hello. So I wanted to talk to you about motivation, about habits, and about how we talk to ourselves. So often when people are struggling, one of the first things that will pop up is that they are feeling unmotivated, that they what the things that they just can't do. So it might be I just can't do a press up. I just can't do it, Beth. Or it might be I just can't seem to get up on my alarm. I just can't do it. Yeah. I just the kids are off school, so I just can't get the sessions done. I just can't get it done. So they're kind of affirming to themselves the things that they can't do. So for me, we're always going to have things, aren't we, that we find more difficult. And if you have perhaps low self-esteem and you have used food as a tool to deal with your emotions, whether that's when you're stressed, whether that's when you feel sad, food, having yummy food is always going to kind of lift your mood in the shorter term. So often we can create really poor habits around sitting on the sofa feeling kind of like unmotivated to want to move, eating food to have that instant kind of like, oh, I feel a bit better, oh, now I feel even worse because of it. And like it's like a cycle. It's like a roller coaster that you can't get off. And when you've had a lot, when you are doing maybe habits or behaviors that you feel that you can't change or that you don't feel happy with, that just turns the volume up or heightens our negative chit chat, internal chatter. So it could be that you kind of display to the rest of the world that you're kind of make a joke about the fact that you feel that you're overweight. Often people mask and hide how they're truly feeling. Maybe that you're feeling unhappy with where your body composition is at currently, or the habits that have led you to that. So you're not happy with some of the decisions that you're making around food, but you kind of hide that because you it's like the elephant in the room. But if we talk about it and identify it, sometimes that can that makes us feel even more aware of what we're doing, so we can kind of just focus on the here and now, isn't it, on the things that we're doing. And that actually can mean that some of the habits that we're performing are not optimal and not working towards us for the greater good, so that our trajectory in the longer term is perhaps where we don't, if we really think about it, is not heading in a place that we want to be. But sometimes burying your head in the sand and just kind of focusing on maybe getting the kids to school, or getting your going to work, paying your bills, cleaning the house, getting it, painting the upstairs bathroom that needs doing, and focusing your mind on sort of small things, day-to-day things, rather than the things that are kind of you have to keep putting to the back of your mind, but that come back out. And then the more you put it to the back of the mind, the more that like it's negative, and self-worth is affected. So you find that you regularly demonize yourself, more so in a way that you would do to somebody else. So you might find that your negative self-talk is much worse to yourself. You talk badly to yourself in a way that you would never talk to somebody else. So you might say like, I'm just not able to do that. Where if a friend asked you, I'm really struggling with this, you might utilize some advice and be like, oh no, I think you could, if you did this, you would be able to do this. But not be able to put that into play for yourself, because you've turned that negative chatter up and you're not dealing with that negative chatter because you're putting your head in the sand. So the more that negative chatter is turned up, the harder sometimes it can actually be to find and do the things that you want to do, because you're constantly reaffirming to yourself the things that you're not capable with. So we need to identify first, you need to bring it to your attention, the things that are no longer working for you. So before you even act, sometimes it's important to just think like, what is it that is not really making me happy in the longer term? Like using food as a comfort isn't making me happy, because I can feel that my weight is stacking up and the trajectory that I'm on isn't great. I'm not moving enough, which means that I'm feeling weaker. I'm not feeling fit. I'm feeling heavier than where I want to be. I'm not, I'm not feeling like I could run after, if there was a zombie attack, I'm not going to be able to run anywhere quick to get away from danger. But that I'm putting myself, maybe you feel like you're putting yourself more at risk of disease, of your children having to care for you. If you're getting older before your time, you're not doing anything to offset some of the negative things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So firstly, looking at yourself, you need to first ask yourself, create an emotional connection as to look at your why you want to change. What are the reasons for your change? Because if you don't have a why, if you don't have a reason to want to change, then often that just draws you back to where you started from. So actually resonating, identifying and bringing to attention some of the things that you're doing that are not working for you, and working towards what it is you want, why you want it. And it could be just that you're so sick of wearing clothes that you like, does it make me look fat? I'm just going to buy it because I feel like it doesn't make me look fat. I'm not actually buying it because I really feel comfortable or really like it. That you feel that you can't, I don't know, like, you couldn't put, you couldn't go into, you couldn't have the light on with your husband, you feel self-conscious. So you feel like, the more and the more then that we don't do things that make us feel uncomfortable, we can kind of talk ourselves out of it. We feel that we're not able, or we're not capable, or we're all or nothing, and we kind of channel our mind to think that this is who we are. And, back in the day, you'd be able to say, once you became a fully fledged adult, this is your IQ level, this is your personality, and that is set in stone. You're fully, that growth happens and change happens as you grow into, from a child to a teenage. And often I think there's a book called The Teenage Brain. I was recommended to read this when I was one of the many days that I was kind of struggling to parent teenagers, and about how we kind of put different hats on when we're teenagers to kind of trial different personalities, and we kind of grow and our personalities form and to the people that we become. And some of that is based on our our past history, on trauma, on our relationships with other people, on situations and things that have happened. And again, we can't change the past. We can't change some of the things that have happened that have led us to where we've been, whether that is positive or negative. And sometimes that negative chat often is louder from the things that we're not doing, the things that we're not prioritizing, the things that we're not calling ourselves out on. So, saying that I'm not motivated, I'm sometimes people say I'm just going to take a little break because I'm just not feeling motivated. And I'm like, well, motivation comes from the things that you're doing. And sometimes, we can bury our head in the sand. If you signed up to the program, if you signed up to want to create change, there is a reason as to why. So identifying that, looking at why, looking at the things that you might want. So that could be, you might identify you want to be somebody that is healthy and fit. Now, if somebody is healthy and fit, what are they doing on the daily in order for them to be healthy and fit? Let's just lay it down and say, what would somebody that's healthy and fit be doing in order for them to be healthy and fit? So the probability is that they're going to be moving more. So they're going to be, getting in daily movement, so that they'll be going for a walk, trying to get their steps up. They'll be looking at adding more colour to their plate. Okay, so they'll be getting in all those micronutrients. They'll be looking at their macronutrients, making sure they're having enough fibre, enough protein. They'll be looking at their sleep, getting to bed, making sure that they get that 8 hours in. They'll be looking at their exercise regime, making sure that they're being consistent, making sure that they are looking at adding progressive overload, looking at different ways to challenge themselves so that they are able to continue to see adaptations and able to see themselves becoming stronger. And they too can identify with being somebody that they feel is fit and healthy. So we look at actions and we look at drawing first the attention. So bringing that to the top, to the focus. So looking at maybe writing a list of what it is you want, what it is you want to achieve. That could be you want to start exercising, you want to start looking at your diet, you want to start moving more, you want to be able to wear a dress without wearing tights underneath or leggings underneath, because you want to feel more confident in your own body. You want to have the light on. Look at the things that you want to do and kind of draw that to attention. So rather than just kind of putting it into the back burner and focusing on the things that are in the here and now, look at the things that perhaps that you're not doing. So maybe I might write a list of some of the habits that are working for you, and some of the habits that aren't working for you. So some of the things that you know that you're doing on the daily that are quite, that you do without effort, without thinking, and look at some of the things that are habits, but they're not a good habit. That could be vaping, smoking. That could be that you go to bed too late, you're on your phone too much. Look at those things, that you eat too much chocolate, you eat too much processed foods, and look at, right, okay, this is what I need to do to initiate change. So I'm not just going to be led by that short-term pleasure response of, can't be arsed today, I'm going to sit on the sofa and there's not going to be any real changes as to whether I don't, if I don't train tomorrow, there is not going to be any real difference to my aesthetics, to my physical fitness. There might be a slight notice for me in my mood, but for the most part, for most people, they just gonna have a Netflix and chill, so there's no real differences. But if I consistently did that over time, first thing I would do is lose strength. And very quickly after some time away, I'll find that my strength drops, and that can quickly then build up, because I have muscle memory. So quite quickly, once I start to be consistent again after a few weeks, my strength levels return back to where they were, and I'm able to resume training as normally. I took a prolonged time away from heavy lifting in pregnancy, and some of my heavier lifts, like my squats, deadlifts, have not gone back to where they used to be. That's an accumulation of perhaps the fact that I'm a little bit older, the fact that I'm not really motivated to really want to shift super heavy weight anymore. Maybe in my 30s I was more kind of ego driven maybe by my lifting, where maybe in my 40s coming into my 50s, it's more about prevention for me and feeling better and feeling strong, and not feeling like I need to lift the heaviest in the room, where I kind of have in the past been like, yeah, I'm going to squat more, I'm going to do more, and like really being all about like, and it became addictive, like being able to do more press-ups or more, being able to do more. And it's not that I don't want to do that now, but for me it's not so much about the weight that I'm shifting, but it's making sure that I'm that I'm turning up, that I'm consistent, that I'm enjoying the process. And that identifies me as somebody that is disciplined, somebody that's determined, and somebody that is doing something that somebody that is focused on their health. Now, you might not be where you want to be. It might be you want to be successful in your business. Well, what would somebody that's successful in business, how do they implement that? What do they need to do? It might be they need to show up on their social media. They need to be more structured with their accounts. They need to focus on their niche market. So whatever it is that you are working towards, you need to identify how do we get there? Okay, these are the things I need to do. I need to get those training sessions in. That might be 2 to 3 sessions a week, but I need to make sure I'm going to commit to that. I'm not going to be led by whether I'm feeling motivated or whether I'm telling myself I can't do it. These are the things that I need to focus on, and I'm going to implement it. And then once you start to implement that, it's not going to happen initially. As I said, there's not going to be any real changes whether I don't do the workout or whether I do. But if I continue to do that, if I'm consistent over time, I'm going to start to feel those changes. And that's also going to build into my self-confidence. I'm going to feel empowered. And I'm also might be able to see the way that my kids look at me. Sometimes it's just, I might come in and I might have done a few pull-ups and I just see kind of like my kids will hide it, but it might be like my eldest, and he'll just be, I see him like kind of like looking at me, and it's a bit just that, no, just that, you know, that's pretty cool, mum. He might not tell me that, but I see it in his face. And I just would like to think that maybe when I'm gone and I'm past, that they might have looked back and be like, actually, my mum was, you know, you didn't mess with my mum. My mum said what she was going to do. She did it. You know, she was somebody of her word, and that means a lot to me. I think for me, you know, I like to have integrity. These are values of mine, so I like that to play into how I treat other people. So being kind to other people, try not to be led by short term, you know, maybe it could be that I feel initially triggered by someone and I want to lose my temper with somebody, but actually I know that just, you know, if I lose my temper for me, that's not directly affecting the person that's in front of me. They might not give a shit. It's me that's going to be triggered and upset by that, and you know, maybe feel rubbish for the rest of the day, and then regret the things that I said. So I have to work on my temper and making sure that how I react to situations, and not being led by that initial feeling of like, this is where I want to explode at you. And the more that I've worked on that, the more that I found that I'm not somebody that does want to explode initially. I might just suddenly think like, whatever, and then I'm like, well, actually, what are the reasons for that person doing that? And actually, if I really think about it, it's probably because they have low self-confidence. They are looking for a reaction, you know, and you know that my dad used to say anger is one letter away from danger, and it's true. So I've always kind of look at things, look at my behavior, look at how I want to identify myself, and is my behavior matching up with who I want to be? And just because you're somebody now, you know, I'm a different person in my 20s, my 30s, and in my 40s, and you can change the way that you are. You can change the way that the actions that you have. It's not too late. You know, just because you identify yourself as not being able to do something, or you're so set in stone in your actions, that doesn't mean to say that if you really work on your actions, on the things that you're doing on the daily, and you are identifying the things that you want to do, that you can't initiate change. So if we're looking at like your neural pathways with neuroplasticity, you can say that we can increase myelation. So we can literally add like more of a fatty substance to our nerve cells. So if we're looking at our neural pathways, we can increase the speed that we create those connections, so that when we come to habits, it just comes more naturally quicker to us because we have strengthened those neural pathways. We can look at our connection. So we can look at, like, if we look at the neurons, at the end of each neuron you have like a bulb, which is called a synapse, and they literally create like chemicals from one synapse to the other. So they're like little balls, and they kind of have like little pathways off them. And as you work on a skill, so that could be that if we're looking at, say, like a language, if I was just being around different language, like say if I was in Portugal, I'm just around, maybe I've just come back from Portugal, that's why I'm talking about it. But if I was hearing Sandra talking in Portuguese, then those neural pathways would strengthen as I'm kind of, that myelation would happen as I started to maybe pick up little words or just being around the language. And then if I start, those synaptic connections would start to intensify if I was starting to talk in Portuguese. So like if I was able to, you know, sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm a bit scared to say something, or, you know, in Portuguese, and I'd ask Sandra, and Sandra would tell me, then those connections would strengthen over time as maybe I became able to create small like conversations, or being able to ask questions in Portuguese. But then you can have something called neurogenesis, which is when literally you can get baby nerve cells that you can literally grow into then adult nerve cells, which then can create again new neural pathways and literally redirect the way that your brain, the connections that you have, and strengthen those pathways so that you can identify, that you can create stronger new skills through you know, and increase your IQ, increase your ability to do things. And again, you know, form, repetition, being able to do things over time, you can build, you can create adaptations in strength, but also in your mind so that you are able to do something more fluidly. And you need to be able to, you know, if you are not motivated, if you don't have that intensity, so if you're not, that desire to change isn't there, then you will, you know, if I was wanting to maybe speak to Sandra and she was only able to speak, you know, Portuguese, or if my husband was Portuguese and I was British, I would then want to speak Portuguese more so because I would want to for him, because that emotional intensity is there. So often if we have that want to do something, or you know, you for me, having a dad that has had dementia and become bedbound, that is an emotional intensity for me to be able to say I'm driven to want change. I'm driven not only just for myself, but for my children, for you know, for my own self-belief, but also looking at the behaviors that I don't want to have, the things that, you know, the habits that I need to call myself out on, the things that I need to work on, calling it to attention. So, you know, write a list down, write the habits that you have, look at the negatives, look at the positive, look at maybe somebody that's fit and healthy, what it is that they're doing on the daily. What would, if somebody that's fit and healthy, write a list down of, get those steps in, get the training sessions. When are you going to do that? Don't leave things to chance, and don't leave things to that short term, I'm motivated, or I feel like doing it, or it's the right time. Make the time, be strong, and you will become more resilient, and you will become more efficient, and your emotional relationship with other people and with yourself will improve, because you will be turning down. I'm not saying that those negative connotations, those negative, you know, if we remove some of the habits, some of all that negative talk, and it could be that you have been beating yourself up for years, you have been having emotional, you know, when I was with my ex-partner, emotional abuse for years, so that internally I felt rotten. I felt I was rotten. I felt that I had no power. I felt nobody would want me. I felt dirty. He made me feel dirty. And I think identifying that and trying to climb out of the hole little by little, on one day, today I managed to do this. It only might be one thing, but I'm not going to focus that I didn't do all the things that I wanted to achieve, but I did one of them, and the next day I did it again, and the next day I did it again, and the next day I did it again, and then I started to train, and then I started to exercise, and I started, and look at those things, and you add it on and you stack those habits together. Okay, so then suddenly they don't just become habits, they become who you are, they become how you identify yourself. And I no longer see myself as dirty and broken and unable to create change. I see myself as a force. I see myself as somebody that, yes, there's still going to be sometimes negative connotations there, but I need to not focus on that, and I need to focus on the things that I need to do, but that I can create literally new pathways into the way that I identify myself, I see myself, but also into new habits and new likes and newfound confidence that I didn't have before. And you too can do it if you don't be a barrier to yourself and just say, because at the minute I'm not motivated. At the minute, it's just not working for me. I can't. At the minute, I'm just overwhelmed with whatever's happening. You need that negative, that is always going to be there. There's always going to be things that you need that are going to try and stop you in your tracks, that lead you to negative thinking, behaviors, self-sabotage, and just trying to look at things to build yourself up, because you need that intrinsic motivation. Yes, it could be that you go to the dentist and he flosses my teeth, and he, I go to the hygienist and he cleans my teeth, or I go to the hairdressers and they do my hair and I feel amazing, and that that motivates me to want to clean my teeth more and look after my hair more, right? When you go to the hairdresser, you're like, I need to be give myself treatments all the time, or I need to make sure that I'm flossing my teeth every day because my teeth look amazing right now. It's all, that's extrinsic, but intrinsic, it comes from the things that we're doing on the daily. Look at what you're doing, and stop telling yourself that you can't do it, and stop looking for the short term easy option. We all want to sit on the sofa and watch Netflix and chill and have the fire on, and not lean into things that are difficult. But sometimes leaning into things that are difficult now make things so much easier in the long run, further down the line, and it helps you to be consistent, so that you can take a day off and it is okay, but that one day doesn't lead to 3 to 5, and then that leads to complete inaction, and you turning up that negative self-dial and struggling with anxiety, or struggling with not feeling capable, and then burying your head in the sand and heightening those other coping mechanisms that may not be beneficial for your long-term mental or physical health. Okay, that is my chat to you on neuroplasticity and how you can literally change the way that you think through your actions. The other thing, I think I wrote this down. Where did I write it? Because it was something that I read recently, and I wanted, where is it? It's in this book somewhere. Hold on. It was asking, so it's just asking your head what it is that you want, okay, and touching your head and just asking your mind what it is that you would like, and then holding your heart and taking some big deep breaths in and asking your heart what it is that you want. Okay, so what it is that you want, and then asking your gut. So our gut is our instinct, what it is that you know that you want, that you desire, and whether those things are aligned to where you are. And I think the amount of times that I had that gut instinct about leaving my ex, or some of the things that I was doing that I knew wasn't really the best way for me to cope. I wish I'd have asked myself and called myself out more. I wish that I had looked at my habits. Wish that I had looked at accountability. Why aren't you doing this, Beth? This is what you need to do. It's not always going to feel easy. It's not always going to be, but you are literally shaping your trajectory, but also that your mind, you can literally help to put to bed some of those identities that you some of those, the way that you identify yourself, that you can literally put some of that to bed and literally create newfound hope, newfound freedom, and a newfound identity. And I'm not saying that I've just made myself up, because I haven't. I've dealt with the things that I wasn't dealing with in the past, and I've worked on how I cope with those triggers, how I cope with difficult times, and I don't just shut it out anymore and ignore it, because it never goes away. It took me 6 years it's nearly 7 years to work that out. It didn't go away. It just took me longer to get where I wanted to be. And I don't regret that, because it kept me on a path, if you like. I kind of feel like my path then to my husband and my kids, that I would not be on that path. I wouldn't be where I needed to be. I was at the right place at the right time, and my life happened from then. And you might be again on that. You're on, your path is you're heading for something, and it's just around the corner that you don't know, but you need to be focused, and you need to be working on your actions and looking at, don't just ignore it. Don't just put your head in the sand, because you might just never change. You need to want to change. But if you're willing, and you and your manifestation and the law of attraction, if you like, together can create just what it is you're looking for. I'm going to say I'm going to love you and leave you, and I will speak to you really soon.